Told my rich dad his new wife was a scammer, he laughed, cut me off, and gave her everything. Now he's broke and begging at my door. I'm a 34-year-old man, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived without a father figure in my life. My parents split up when I was just a little kid. My mom came from a blue-collar background, while my dad was born into wealth. At first, their marriage seemed happy enough, but things started to unravel when Dad's side of the family made it clear they didn't approve of him marrying my mom. They didn't think she measured up, and they made her life really hard. When I was born, it felt like all that judgment and negativity shifted onto me. The way his relatives acted toward me only added more pressure on my mom. She tried to get my dad to understand, but he just brushed her off, like she was being dramatic. Eventually, things got so bad that mom hit her limit and filed for divorce. I was too young to really understand what was happening at the time, but what I do remember is this massive change, going from living in a big house with staff who catered to us, to a modest little apartment in the suburbs with just mom and me. My grandparents on mom's side became our rock. Grandma stepped up and took care of me while mom went out looking for work. Grandpa made sure I got to and from school safely until I was old enough to handle it on my own. Even though my dad sent child support every month, he never showed much interest in actually being a father. On the rare days we were supposed to spend time together, he'd often cancel last minute, leaving me waiting around. After a while, he just stopped trying altogether. I still remember my birthdays, sitting around hoping he'd show up. Most years, if he did come, it was late and he was clearly drunk. Other times, he didn't show at all. Once I got my own phone, I used to call him constantly, but he rarely answered. My mom must have seen that he wasn't going to step up, so she tried her best to be there for me in every way she could. Oddly enough, that made me even more upset. I guess as a moody, angry teenager, I unfairly blamed her for the fact that Dad didn't want to be around. When I was 16, I got into a huge argument with my mom and ran away from home. I called my dad, hoping he'd come get me. He didn't. So I took matters into my own hands and went straight to his house since I knew where he lived. I rang the doorbell again and again until he finally opened the door, looking shocked to see me standing there. I gave him a small smile and asked if I could come in. That's when I noticed a woman behind him, wearing what looked like one of his shirts. At first, I didn't think much of it, but then things clicked. Instead of inviting me in, my dad stepped outside and closed the door behind him. He asked if I was okay, and I told him about the fight I had with my mom. I said I just needed a place to stay for a bit while things settled down. But he told me he wasn't really prepared to take care of a teenager. I just stared at him, trying to make sense of what he meant. I reminded him that he was my dad. He gave me this awkward look and said it was just bad timing because he had company, his lady friend, as he put it. Then he told me I should head back to my mom's place. Hearing that come out of his mouth, it hurt. It felt like any illusion I had about him shattered in that moment. I went home crying and told my mom everything. She didn't even care about the fight we had earlier. She just hugged me and tried to comfort me, and honestly, that made me feel a little less worthless. After that, I stopped trying to reach out to him. He'd send a quick text on my birthday or during the holidays, just a line or two, never anything personal. I stopped asking him to come to school events, stopped inviting him to anything. That distance kept growing until there was nothing left. I made myself a promise after that. I swore I'd never let anyone make me feel that small again. I was going to build something for myself, with grit, independence, and drive. I made it through high school and got into college on a full scholarship. Then, out of the blue, one day during college, my dad called me. We hadn't spoken in years, and I almost didn't pick up. But part of me thought maybe it was something serious, so I answered. From the sound of his voice, he was drunk. He was all cheerful, saying he was getting married next month. I was stunned. Then he told me he wanted me to meet the love of his life, along with her kids, my new step-siblings, apparently. Hearing that hit me like a punch in the gut. By then, I had accepted that he didn't love me, and I figured maybe he just didn't like kids. But hearing him talk about how excited he was to be a dad to her kids, it made me wonder if he just didn't love me in particular. He kept going on and on about how amazing her kids were and how he couldn't wait for all of us to be one big happy family. I politely told him I was glad he found happiness, but I wasn't interested in being part of his new family. That's when he started begging me to come to the wedding, saying it would mean a lot. I didn't think it was a good idea at all, but he kept pushing. I talked to my mom about it, and she was just as surprised as I was. She hadn't expected him to reach out after all these years. She reminded me that I was an adult now and that it was entirely up to me whether I wanted to reconnect with him or not. After thinking it over for a few days, I finally said yes, hoping maybe, just maybe, this was a chance for a fresh start, that maybe he had changed. He invited me to dinner to meet his fiancée and her kids before the wedding. That dinner turned out to be a complete disaster. His fiancée, Kayla, made it clear she didn't like me. Her kids, Brandon and Ursula, didn't say a word to me and barely acknowledged I was even there. The whole atmosphere was cold and awkward, like I was crashing someone else's party. Meanwhile, my dad was just rambling on, totally oblivious to how uncomfortable it all was. He kept saying how proud he was to be a dad to 3 amazing kids now and how excited he was for us all to bond as a family. It was hard to listen to. Here he was, talking about being a family man, something he never bothered to be for me and my mom. He was acting like he finally figured out how to be a father, just not for me. I didn't say anything, though. I held my tongue, thinking maybe he really was trying this time. I wanted to believe he had changed. And so, we ate dinner. While we were finishing up dinner, my dad casually brought up something that immediately put me on edge, his will. He mentioned that, with his upcoming marriage, he'd had to make some changes to the ownership of his properties. I gave a polite nod, not really interested in diving into that topic. Then he dropped the real bombshell. He told me he'd invited me there that night to let me know, face to face, that he was transferring everything, his entire fortune, all his businesses, to Kayla's kids, Brandon and Ursula. I just stopped eating and stared at him, stunned. He told me he didn't want this to catch me off guard later, so he figured he'd give me a heads up now. I took a deep breath and asked him why he felt the need to tell me all this, especially since I'd never once asked him for money or wanted anything to do with his businesses. He went on to explain that it was Kayla who insisted he tell me, so I wouldn't bother her kids in the future. He added that since I already had a job, he didn't think I needed any financial help. According to him, Brandon and Ursula didn't have jobs and needed to learn how to manage the business world if they wanted to be successful someday. This, he said, would give them a good start in life. I just sat there, trying to wrap my head around what he just said. I was doing everything I could to stay calm. So I asked him straight up, did he have any idea what kind of message this was sending me? He looked me in the eye and, with total calm, said it was simply a practical move for the financial security of his new family. That was it. I couldn't keep the frustration in anymore. I told him how deeply disappointing it was to hear all of this. I reminded him that he had barely been present in my life emotionally or financially, and now he was handing over everything he had to 2 kids who weren't even his. It felt like he had taken the knife and twisted it. He seemed caught off guard by how upset I was and asked if it was the inheritance part that bothered me. I met his eyes and told him no, it wasn't about the money. I didn't care about that. What I wanted was a father who actually gave a damn about me. What hurt was how he kept choosing his stepchildren over me, his own son. He tried to spin it, saying I shouldn't be jealous of Brandon, that he treated us all equally. But that only made things worse. Because the truth was, he didn't treat us the same. Not even close. And hearing him say that just made the divide feel even deeper. Still, as angry and hurt as I was, I didn't want to cause a scene right there at the table. So I bit my tongue, finished the rest of my food in silence, and sat there with this heavy mix of hurt and resentment brewing inside me. In that moment, it became painfully clear I was never going to be a priority in his life. All that talk about starting fresh and reconnecting? Just more empty promises. After dinner, I thanked him politely, said goodbye to Kayla and her kids, then walked out of that restaurant for good. As soon as I got back to my dorm, I blocked him and his whole new family on everything. I didn't want anything more to do with them. I tried not to think about my dad after that. I pushed him out of my mind completely. But just a few days later, something unexpected happened. I got a Facebook friend request from someone named Michael. Without giving it much thought, I accepted. Almost immediately, he sent me a message along with a picture and asked if I recognized the people in it. I furrowed my brows and downloaded the photo. Sure enough, it was a picture of my dad with his new family. I messaged him back, confused, asking where he got that and why he was sending it to me. Michael explained that he'd been looking at my dad's profile and saw some old photos that included me. He noticed the resemblance and figured I might be his son. Then he got to the real reason he reached out. He told me he knew Brandon and Ursula from way back, and he needed to talk to my dad about something important. But since my dad never replied to his messages, he decided to come to me instead. Now I was curious, so I asked what it was he needed to talk to my dad about. And that's when he hit me with something I wasn't expecting. Michael told me that both Brandon and Kayla had a sketchy past and a reputation for scamming people. He said he'd grown up in the same neighborhood as them. Brandon, apparently, had a serious gambling problem and owed a lot of money around town. Kayla, on the other hand, had been caught multiple times stealing makeup and clothes from stores. Their shady behavior was well known in the area. Then he said one day, out of nowhere, Kayla disappeared with both kids, and the whole neighborhood was left stunned. Michael said he just wanted to warn my dad, in case he didn't know what he was dealing with. I asked him if he had any proof and he did. He sent over screenshots from group chats where people were talking about Brandon's debts and shady behavior. He even sent me mugshots from one of Brandon's past arrests. As for Kayla, Michael worked mall security and had footage of her stealing from stores. He said the mall manager had blacklisted her and didn't mind the video being shared online to serve as a warning. Now, I didn't want a relationship with my father anymore, but that didn't mean I wanted him to be taken advantage of. The thought that he'd just handed his entire life's fortune over to these people made my stomach turn. I told my mom everything and asked her what I should do. She was just as shocked as I was. We talked it through and agreed that she should be the one to bring it up to him. As I expected, my dad didn't take the news well. He got into an argument with my mom right away. Even after she explained everything clearly and showed him all the evidence Michael had sent, he refused to believe any of it. Instead, he accused me of making up stories just to get my hands on his money. Even when my mom tried showing him the screenshots and videos, he kept defending Brandon and Kayla, insisting they could never do anything like that. My mom, who has zero tolerance for nonsense, cut him off then and there. She told him flat out that we'd done our part. We warned him. What he chose to do with that information was on him. A few days later, since I'd blocked his number and messages, he sent me an email instead. It was full of rage. He accused me of stooping too low this time and said he couldn't believe I would try to destroy his bond with his stepkids. At that point, I was just done. I was beyond pissed, but I knew better than to keep fighting a losing battle. I let it go. Deep down, I knew karma had a way of handling things. He chose to give everything he had to two people with a shady past, and even after I warned him, he turned on me instead of listening. At that point, I had done everything I possibly could. I'd warned him, laid out the truth, and walked away when he chose not to listen. That dinner was the last time I ever heard from my father. Both my mom and I made the decision to cut him off for good after that. Years passed. Eventually, my mom remarried a wonderful man named Luke. He's a genuinely good guy, kind, supportive, and everything my mom deserves in a partner. I really enjoy spending time with him, and he treats her like gold. As for me, I graduated from college and landed a great job. Life finally started to feel steady. Over time, we occasionally heard through mutual friends that my dad wasn't doing so well, no surprise there. Apparently, his so-called children, Brandon and Ursula, had slowly drained his wealth, and his businesses were drowning in debt. We didn't check up on him, didn't interfere. He'd made his choices. I had moved into my own apartment by then and was loving the freedom of building my life on my own terms. Then one day, completely out of the blue, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and stood frozen. There he was, my father. But he wasn't the man I remembered. He looked tired, worn out, a mere shadow of who he used to be. I blinked, stunned. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He sighed, clearly embarrassed, and said he was in a tough spot with nowhere else to go. He'd gone by my mom's place first, but no one answered the door. I told him she and Luke were away on vacation. He nodded, then explained he'd reached out to some of our old mutual friends, asking if they knew how to find me. That's how he ended up on my doorstep. Then he asked if he could come inside, just for a few minutes. I hesitated. Compassion and years of resentment wrestled inside me, but I stepped aside and told him he had 10 minutes to explain himself. The air felt thick with tension as he walked in and sat down. I stayed standing, arms crossed, trying to steady the swirl of emotions building in my chest. Then, nervously, he started talking. He admitted he had lost everything, his entire fortune, all his assets, because of Kayla and Brandon. I didn't even react. I had seen this train wreck coming years ago. I warned him. He didn't listen. He said they'd run his businesses into the ground, racking up debts they couldn't pay. Eventually, the bank stepped in and seized their home. Now, they were broke, living out of a cheap motel. He said when he finally confronted Kayla about her kids' behavior, she blew up. She threatened to leave him, accused him of attacking her children, and insisted they were only trying to do what they thought was right. I stayed quiet until that moment, but I couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. "Why are you surprised?" I asked flatly. "I told you this would happen. You didn't want to hear it." He sighed and looked down. "Back then, I thought you were just jealous, that I was giving them the attention I never gave you. I really believed they were good kids." Then, unbelievably, he turned the blame back on me. He said that if I'd only tried harder to convince him, maybe none of this would have happened. That's when I decided it was time he got a reality check. I turned on the TV and connected my phone via Bluetooth. Then I played every bit of evidence Michael had sent me all those years ago, screenshots, mugshots, videos. One by one, they lit up the screen. There was Kayla, caught stealing. Brandon's arrest record. Group chats full of people sharing stories of how Brandon owed them money. My dad sat there in stunned silence, watching it all unravel before him. The pain and betrayal in his eyes mirrored what I'd carried around for years. He was finally seeing, firsthand, the damage of his own blind loyalty. And I didn't let that moment slip by. This, I told him, my voice steady and sharp, is just the beginning. You lost everything because you refused to believe the people who actually cared about you. You chose them over us, and now you're living with the fallout. I told him how I had spent years trying to believe he was a good man underneath it all, someone I could eventually reconnect with. But time after time, he let me down. And now I was finally seeing karma do what it does best. He tried to protest again, saying I should have gone to the police with the evidence, that maybe they could have helped him uncover the truth. That's when I snapped. It wasn't my job to report them, I said, my voice rising. Mom tried to show you the proof. You shut her down. What more did you expect us to do? I laid it all out for him. The truth was, he had no one to blame but himself. He made the choice to trust con artists over his own son. He handed them everything, no questions asked. He refused to see what was right in front of him. Then I stood up, walked to the door, and told him to leave. We're done, I said firmly. He got up, still speechless, and quietly walked out. That wasn't about revenge for me. It wasn't about stooping to his level. It was about finally, once and for all, holding up a mirror and showing him the full weight of his choices. I wanted him to sit with that silence, the one where he had no one left to blame. And while part of me felt relief after showing him the truth, I couldn't shake the image of his face when it finally hit him when he realized what his precious stepchildren had really done. Sometimes I still wonder, should I have tried harder? Should I have pushed more when he handed everything over to those kids? Update 1. I'm honestly blown away by the reaction to my story. I posted just a few hours ago, and the response has been overwhelming. So many of you have shown support, and I really appreciate it. To those of you who think I could have done more, let me just clarify something. My mom did sit him down and have a serious conversation about all this. She tried. We both did. He didn't want to hear it. At that time, I was deeply hurt and needed to protect my own mental well-being. I couldn't keep reaching out to someone who clearly didn't want to listen. And you know what? He never did a simple background check on Kayla or her kids. That alone could have changed everything. But he chose to trust them blindly. And that choice, well, it cost him everything. He could have avoided all of this. Honestly, I don't know if I'll ever be ready to have a real relationship with my father again, at least not anytime soon. He's put me through so much over the years, and that kind of damage doesn't just disappear. That said, I've decided to take the advice so many of you offered. I'm going to start therapy. I know I've got some things to work through, and if there's any chance of healing or growing from this, I need to start with myself. Update 2. Something unexpected happened, and I figured I should share it. It's been a few weeks since everything went down with my dad, but just last night out of nowhere I got a call from him. It was past midnight, and when I picked up, I could tell right away he was drunk. His words were slurred, barely coherent. Concerned, I asked if something had happened, but the call cut off before he could say much else. Worried, I tried calling back several times. Eventually, a man picked up and introduced himself as the bartender. He told me my dad wasn't in any condition to stand, let alone walk, and asked if I could come pick him up. He gave me the address of the bar, and without thinking twice, I grabbed my keys and headed over. When I arrived, I found my father completely wasted. He kept mumbling about regrets, things he'd done to my mom, how he'd pushed me away, how the only person he could trust anymore was me. I didn't say much. I just helped him into the car, debating what to do next. I didn't feel right taking him back to Kayla at the motel, so I asked if he wanted to sleep it off at my apartment. He shook his head and muttered, "I can't go back to her." That caught my attention. I asked him what he meant, and after a pause, he said Kayla had left him. I wanted to ask more, but he was in no state to explain anything clearly. So I took him back to my place and set him up in the guest room. As I sit here writing this, he's snoring in the next room, and I'm just waiting for him to wake up so we can talk. It was strange, seeing him like that. He's never been the type to drink heavily, not like this. I called my mom and let her know what was going on. She had just returned from vacation and told me she'd come over soon. She wanted to be there when we confronted him, together. Update 3. After my dad finally woke up, my mom and I sat him down. At first, he was reluctant to talk, avoiding our questions. I didn't have the patience for games, so I told him, bluntly, not to ever wake me up in the middle of the night with a drunken call again unless he was ready to be honest. He apologized, looking ashamed. He admitted the reason he hadn't told us anything right away was because he was embarrassed. Then, slowly, the truth began to unravel. He said that after watching the evidence I'd shown him on my TV, those screenshots, the mugshots, the security footage, he confronted Kayla. She denied everything at first, insisting I had made it all up. But when he threatened to go to the police, she finally broke down and confessed. Kayla admitted that Brandon and Ursula had always been scammers. She told him she'd moved from her old neighborhood to escape the whispers and judgment, hoping to start fresh in a new city. When she met my dad, she saw a chance at financial security and hoped her kids would finally straighten out. But they didn't. They kept racking up debt, living recklessly, and dragging him down with them. She said she knew what they were doing the whole time but never thought things would get this bad. When my father lost everything, she started packing. Told him she'd been thinking about leaving anyway. Then she walked out. My dad was on the verge of tears as he told us all this. And while a part of me felt sorry for him, I couldn't ignore the fact that he brought all of this on himself. He trusted a woman and her kids over me, his own son. And now he was left with nothing. He turned to my mom and apologized, over and over, asking for her forgiveness. He told her he regretted letting her go and admitted that he had made a terrible mistake. Then he looked at me. He asked if I could forgive him too. Said he wanted to spend the rest of his life trying to make things right. We didn't say anything. We just sat there. I think he understood the silence. Now, he and Kayla are preparing to meet with their lawyers to begin the divorce process. I hope he follows through with it. I hope he takes legal action against her and her kids for what they've done. It won't be easy. They won't admit their wrongs so easily, and the legal road ahead will be messy. But with the evidence I gave him and the financial records he can pull from his old companies, he might have a fighting chance. Time will tell how it all plays out. But for now, I hope my father wakes up every morning knowing exactly what he lost. I hope he carries that weight and learns from it. Maybe, just maybe, he can grow into a better man. As for me, I'll keep moving forward. I'll keep holding my head high and becoming the best version of myself, just like my mother taught me.